Welcome to January's PSA with Chief Burgard. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, you as well.
We're in the month of January for this month public safety announcement. And I'd like to talk about, first off, carbon monoxide. What is that? What are the dangers?
Great topic to have for the heating time of year. So carbon monoxide is a dangerous chemical to humans that takes away oxygen inside of our bodies. The way that it's created is through inefficient burning of a fuel. So it could be natural gas, it could be propane, it could be from gasoline from a car, even from logs from burning in a fireplace. Anything that's inefficient, monoxide. Now it's a colorless, odorless gas. So it's not like natural gas or propane where you get the smell with it, but this gas that's mixed in with the air, you can't tell it's there unless someone starts feeling sick or a meter is used.
And with carbon monoxide being, again, a silent killer, there are ways that you can monitor that on your own. And with those, obviously, detection. If you're starting a fire, make sure you have the flue open, make sure you have a good clean chimney that you're working with. And these, that one obviously would be the homeowner's decision or responsibility, for having a fire and making sure that everything's open, making sure your chimney's clean. But carbon monoxide alarms are readily accessible.
Yes, absolutely. And it's actually state law to have them in single family and multifamily homes as well.
Okay.
So just like we need to have smoke detectors in our house, there needs to be at least one carbon monoxide detector in there. Now, there's multiple ways that you can do it. There are, at any hardware store that you go to, there are the simple ones that you just plug into an outlet and they stay there with a very small display readout on it, and that's it. You leave them alone until the end of their life. There are also some ceiling mounted ones that look very similar to a smoke detector, and you change out their batteries every 6 months whenever we change the clocks, just like our smoke detectors. Or there's combination units. So if anyone at home has the thought that it's time to replace our smoke detectors because they're at life, typically between 7 and 10 years old, you can look at getting combination units where it will do smoke detection and carbon monoxide detection all from one detector. And having those on every level of the floor is every level of the home, is key. So in our basements, typically where we find the mechanicals, like a furnace or a water heater, that's where we can create a lot of carbon monoxide if something goes wrong. We want to make sure there's one down there. Also the sleeping level of the floor. Anywhere that there's bedrooms, anyone that could be asleep, we need to have those meters as well. But as you mentioned, a very easy way to detect carbon monoxide is by having the detectors, getting alerted, and then the preventative steps that you mentioned, like having the flue open in your fireplace. Also for anyone who doesn't have a fireplace, some maintenance to do at your home with vents. So whenever it gets really, really cold outside, after it snows, or maybe the snow melts and then freezes, that can block a vent. So knowing how the venting in your home works. If it's the white plastic PVC pipe that can freeze over when it gets very cold, making sure that it remains clear all the time. If the vent gets blocked by snow or ice or a small animal trying to stay warm for winter, that can make those exhaust gases come back inside the house, carbon monoxide to come in and get people very sick.
How would one remove the ice from a vent?
Good question. So if it's on ground level and you don't have to climb a ladder to get there, typically a little bit of warm water will melt the ice off of it and away you go. We don't recommend using a hammer because the plastic becomes very fragile when it's cold out as well, and you don't want to cause more problems. But slowly heating it up would be the easiest way. If it's on the roof, it's a whole different thing to deal with. If it's vertically vented, you might have to find a service to go on your roof for you if you're not able to do so, and then melt that off of there. Snow drifts when we get more snow for the year. It's just a matter of shoveling it away or getting a roof rake with multiple extensions to rake it away. But normally the warm water, if it's frozen, is the easiest way.
So if it is on the roof and you're concerned about that and you do call service to come and help clear that off, would they meter, meaning would they go in with a handheld device and say, oh yes, we have CO present? Is that something that they do, or is that just on the fire department?
Good question. So many installers and maintenance companies for HVAC, so a furnace or a water heater, a lot of those services would have carbon monoxide detection equipment with them. Someone who provides outside like maintenance services, probably not as likely. But if anyone ever feels sick, If there's any question like, I'm having flu-like symptoms, so that would
Okay.
be nausea, vomiting, extreme headache, something completely out of the ordinary, you haven't felt sick any other time and this just kind of came on, that's a good time to call the fire department and say, hey, we randomly got sick out of the blue, we would like the house metered. That's your time to get this checked out by the fire department. If it's just a random check and saying, hey, my furnace hasn't been maintained in the last 5, 6, 7 years, let's have a furnace technician come out. They typically do have that capability with them.
And on that, with the signs and symptoms, are birds, guinea pigs, dogs, cats affected by carbon monoxide as much as a human being would be?
Good question. Every animal reacts differently based on its size.
Okay.
So sometimes birds can react to it quicker than anything else if they're the smaller birds. Dogs sometimes react slower than everything else depending on their respiratory system. So not a real good way to detect what it is. The gold standard is having an actual detector in your house within date range to let you know if there's carbon monoxide in your home.
Okay, for people that have the mounted alarms, whether it's a smoke detector or a carbon monoxide detector, and they're hearing chirping and they're hearing beeping and they pull the battery out because they want to sleep, what do you want to say to these people?
A couple of things. So good points. Number one, remember that your detectors, as we mentioned before, do expire. They're not good for life. Everyone's going to have a born-on date when it was made. And typically, again, between 7 and 10 years from the date it was made is when it has to be disposed of. Some of those chirps can be an end-of-life chirp. So it's very important to save the manual that comes with your detector.
Okay.
It's going to tell you 1 chirp means X and 2 chirps means Y.
Okay.
Sometimes one of them is a battery, low battery life. One of them is going to tell you that there's a malfunction with it or some other type of maintenance issue. And then another one's going to be that it's reached too much carbon monoxide and it's time to get out of the home. Keeping that manual on hand and knowing how it works is very important. If it is a battery operated unit, knowing that you do have to change the batteries in it. Even if they're battery backup and they're hardwired, those batteries do need to get replaced. But there are lifetime units that have lithium ion batteries inside of them that are good for their entire life. They're good for up to 10 years where you don't touch them until they chirp a certain pattern to tell you that it's time to replace them. So make sure that they're good in working condition, that they are appropriately powered, and that they're getting their batteries maintained regularly.
And if you're maintaining the batteries to have on hand are 9 volts and AA's. Is that the traditional standard battery that we can state here, or?
Everything used to be going towards the 9 volts, so that
The square.
Yeah, those big rectangular batteries, because nothing else really used them. Now a lot of detectors have also moved into the AA realm as well. It's just a more popular battery, and it is easier to reallocate those into remote controls and leave those little battery doors open. Some detectors have gotten smart where if you do pull the batteries out, there's a small capacitor that holds battery that will chirp at you to remind you for a short period of time that, hey, put my batteries back in, but not every detector does that. So every model is just a little bit different.
Okay. And again, we're recording this in January, traditionally a cold month for Wisconsin, and a lot of the homes in our area, that is the response area for Hartford Fire and Rescue, have that older type dwelling where they have radiators or they have some baseboard heat and maybe one corner of the room's not warm enough. So now we're looking at putting in a space heater. And there are definite considerations to make about putting in a space heater, making sure you have proper outlets to put those in, and making sure that there's nothing around them. Let's just touch on that briefly before we close.
Yeah, good point. So electric heat is the one heat source that doesn't create carbon monoxide. So the one bonus to it. So if you have electric baseboard heat or one of the plug-in electric little space heaters, those don't create carbon monoxide because they don't burn fuel. So that's the one bonus to them. The downside is that they do create heat through electricity, so they can be a danger. So as you mentioned, you normally want to have those plugged into its own circuit. So plugged into an outlet with nothing else plugged into it. If there's multiple extension cords or a power strip on that outlet, you do risk the chance of blowing a breaker, blowing a fuse that it's plugged into, because they do draw a good amount of power. Having a good amount of space, normally we say 2 to 3 feet in a circle around the space heater to make sure nothing else comes in contact with it. They can start fires. Many of the newer ones that have been built in the last 20 years will have a safety at tip over protection. So the sensor in there, if it gets tipped over, it automatically shuts off. Now it is hot for that instant that it does touch the ground, so making sure if it's on carpeting, on a space rug, it needs a clear space so that we can't accidentally start a fire.
Now, with plugging that into one outlet, just to let our viewers know that maybe are not aware of this, if there's two outlets on your switch plate, that means the only thing that's getting plugged in there is going to be that heater. The same thing goes along, my understanding is, with the electric fireplaces have become very popular, and keeping that separate outlet, even though there's two, the only thing that's getting plugged in there is your electric fireplace.
Absolutely. So a standard duplex outlet where you see a circle above and a circle below, sorry. You only want to use one of those, especially with those fireplaces, because it's technically two devices that are running. It is the space heater inside of it that makes heat, plus a blower. There's a fan in there. So you're technically running two devices to blow, to blow the heat out of the unit. So extra important to not have anything else plugged into that circuit.
That's a great explanation, and I hope that our viewers will take this into mind when they are purchasing their new electric fireplace for their living room. Finally can have that fireplace, but you really need to follow the safety.
Absolutely. Make sure there's nothing else being used so we keep safe.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And to our viewers, as always, thank you for watching.